You're listening to the Courage Hotline with Candace Doby. Thanks for hanging out with me, y'all, on the Courage Hotline. I'm your host, speaker, author, and leadership development strategist, Candace Doby. And I'm really excited to be your courage coach for this show. If you have not done so, please go ahead and hit that subscribe button so you don't miss an upcoming episode. And if you're out there and you love this podcast, I know you love it, do me a favor and leave a rating and a review, because when you do that, you are helping the platform you are listening to this podcast on know that this content is valuable. And then they'll share it with more people who need to activate their courage at work and in the world. Now, on this podcast, if this is your first time listening, check it out. I serve up candid advice to callers who need help doing hard things in their professional lives. Things like, giving the critical feedback or setting boundaries and speaking up in intimidating spaces. On each episode, y'all, I draw upon a decade of research on courage to help the people put their fear in check and their feet in motion. That's right. And I do it, y'all, with the same signature blend of truth, love, and shade that captures audiences when I'm speaking on stage. All right, I am ready to spill the courage tea, honey. So here we go. We have a question in from Lisa, who has written into the podcast, and her question is, what would be your advice for gaining clarity and courage when you take a risk and move into a more prestigious position, then realize it is not a good fit? It does not bring you joy. How do you bow out of the position without feeling like it is a backward move? I'm going to tell you how, Lisa. You bow out. That's it. The only way for you to find out if that was or wasn't a good fit for you was to go for it, which is what you did. Now, a question that I'm asking myself is, why does bowing out have to feel like a backwards move? Lisa, I really think this is an opportunity for you to check your beliefs, because moving on from the position isn't necessarily a backwards move. I would actually call it the right move to continue down your personal path of stepping into the fullness of your potential and power. So sure, absolutely, it might be disappointing. All right. But backwards, I'm not so sure about that. I'm not going to commit to that, because everything I believe is forward motion. Even setbacks can be characterized as forward motion because the lessons and insight and new awareness and energy that can come from a setback is all there to propel you where? Forward. Now, Lisa, I think you've got some options, all of which may require conjuring courage for. So I think that there are three main ones. Let's go over them and see if any of them, are calling your name or resonate with you. The first thing that I think you can do is ask your boss for help. Now, there may be ways you and your boss can come up with to make this position a better fit for you. If your boss has invested in your development and your growth, then they likely want you to be successful in the role. So perhaps there are parts of the role that can be explored and altered to make it a better fit for you. People don't like to ask for help. So maybe this is something, or why this is something you may not have considered. Because oftentimes when people need to ask for help, they equate the action with looking or feeling weak or incompetent or needy. And so I'm here to say, if this sounds like this is something that you want to do, girlfriend, ask from a place of power. So when you go into your boss's office to ask about how this position can maybe be morphed or flexed so it is a better position for you, talk about what you've already done to make it work, or the work that you've put in. Talk about how you've analyzed different parts of the role. Talk about how you've already made some changes that would allow you to work to the best of your ability and to improve the team or make the team better if you are managing people. Talk about how you have thought about different parts of the job that maybe don't bring you joy and what you could do to find more joy in them. Talk about the things that you have done, because when we are going to people and we are asking for help, it is helpful to talk to the people about what we have already done to get to a solution, to make this better, to make this work. So that's how we can come from a place of power when we are making an ask. The second thing that I would suggest is you can connect your ask back to your team or organization's values. So if your organization says something like, we value our people, then you can lean into that. I know this organization really values its people, which means it values me. And I want to ensure I'm creating the most value for the organization in return. And then you can say something like, I don't feel like I'm able to do that in my current role or as the current role is laid out. So connecting it back to your organization's values is a great entry point into having this conversation and asking from a place of power, because you are basically showing that you want to live out the organization's values, and you're asking your boss to help you do that. So that's the first option. The second option that I would say, and you might not like this one, but I'm going to say it anyway, is to confront yourself. Yes. I think one of the options is for you absolutely to dig underneath what you are saying here in terms of this position not being a good fit, or it doesn't bring you joy. Could it be that you're saying it's not a good fit because it's hard? Could it be that you're saying it's not a good fit because you don't have the confidence yet in what you're doing? You recognize that there is a big gap between where you are and where you want to be, and that doesn't feel good. So these are realities that don't on the surface bring a lot of joy to your job. It is important though, Lisa, for you to be honest with yourself in identifying if the not good fit or doesn't bring me joy part of your question is coming from a place of self-doubt. And if you felt more competent in your role, maybe you wouldn't be feeling this way. So number two, Lisa, that's what I want you to think about. Do you need to confront yourself to really figure out if this part of your question are not feeling good about where you are in your role? If it's coming from just a place of you, not having the ability, skills, confidence, competence that you need to feel good in the role. Number three, the last thing that I'm going to say here is work the job until you can set up your next move, Lisa. If this truly is a job that doesn't bring you joy, you're not happy in, it's not a good fit, understand that you can move on. And it doesn't necessarily mean that you're making a backward move. It could just mean that you're going to move on to a just as prestigious job in another company, maybe with a different company. So this arrangement is either going to require you to be uncomfortable in your position until you can make that move, or it will require you to change your mindset about your current condition to make it more manageable or make it manageable enough until you can move on to something else. So those are the three options that I am bringing up that came up for me, all of which are probably going to require some level of courage for you either to go and ask for something, to confront yourself, or to stay in the position until the opportunity presents itself for you to move on. All right, Lisa, thank you so much for writing in. I hope everything ends up working out for you. I want to share with you that I've got a special retreat coming up. It is called the YourBrilliance Retreat, and I created it specifically for Black young professional women who are ready to conjure the courage to show up and step up and speak up at work without apprehension or apology. In 2 power-packed days, participants learn and leverage my process for managing fear, activating personal courage, and taking risks so they can spend less time and energy censoring or hiding themselves and more time demonstrating their brilliance. If this sounds like it's for you, then let me say this. Listen up. It is time to stop playing games with your potential. If you're interested in attending or sponsoring a participant, please visit CandaceDoby.com for more information.
Hi, Candace. My name's Zachary Cochran. I have a career coaching business, and I thought of a very interesting opportunity, but I haven't moved on it yet, in part because it would be separate and a complementary business to my work as a career coach. The question I'm asking myself is this: how do I make an informed decision about this situation and determine if fear is holding me back? Here's the situation. As a career coach, I see that young adults don't always have the money to hire a coach, even if it would be very valuable to them. But as a creative and an avid board gamer, I think I could create a fun board game that also teaches them principles they need for career success. Making and selling a board game seems like a big investment of time and money, though, And while I'm aware that using design thinking as a tool, uh, I'm not clear on what my roadmap is yet. How would you recommend I proceed or not with this sort of out there idea to combine two things that I'm skilled at and enjoy as a potentially significant revenue generator and a way to create a massive positive impact for many young adults without taking on too much financial risk personally or absorbing too much of my time? I'm in a unique position where I believe very few people live at this cross section that I do as an experienced career coach and as a strategic and hard to beat board gamer. And since the only other careers game in the market, based on my preliminary market research, is a very dated Parker Brothers game called Careers that very few people have even heard of, I think I've discovered an underserved market where I could help create a valuable and fun gift for parents to give to their high school age or to, maybe young professional age children as a way to make more money in their career paths and to know how to better invest in themselves through smarter choices that they make.
Zachary, here's what I think you should do. I think you should just do it. Like, I'm serious. This is such a unique combination, which is really what makes this idea so interesting. And I can tell, Zachary, that you've been thinking about this for a little bit of time. And I can tell that because of the detail of your question, you've been thinking about this for a while. And so I just want to share with you, Zachary, that I have a personal rule of thumb, which is if an idea stays with me in my head, rolling around in my brain for longer than 2 weeks, then I am required, I have a personal requirement that I have to do something about it. Meaning I have to write it down, I have to do some research, I have to do something. And it clearly sounds like you are there where you want to do something about this idea. And it sounds like you are just a little hesitant when you think about the risks that are involved in this idea. So for your question, let's do something. Let's focus on the risk because that's really what you're asking me about. You know, you mentioned some of the potential risk that you've already been thinking about, which is a financial risk potentially. And then there is a time risk that this could take a lot of time and energy to figure out. And so one of the things that I like to say about risk is that the first thing we have to do with risk is that we have to clarify them. And we clarify them so that we can calculate them. We calculate them so that we can control them. So you see the alliteration I just did there? We clarify, we calculate, and we control. Now, this alliteration, I like alliteration. I happen to be an English major and a journalism major. Thank you very much. But this also makes, this process or my process easy to remember. So again, you clarify, what are those risks? What are they? And then you calculate the risk. What are the consequences that come into play from these risks? And then you control them. So what strategies, techniques, boundaries do you need to put in place to minimize the risks? I actually had a conversation with a friend, I'll call her a friend or an associate. I don't know. We only had like a couple conversations. So what do you call that person? Maybe a connection. There, we'll go with that. And we were talking about risk, and she actually used the word de-risk. And I had never really heard of it that way, but essentially that's what we're doing when we are controlling for the risk. We are de-risking the situation. So again, you want to clarify the risk, you want to calculate them, and you want to control them. So when we are taking courageous action, we do this for everything. From challenging half-baked ideas on our teams that we know won't deliver results, to asking, why we weren't considered for the promotion, or to having a hard conversation with our colleagues about belonging. Whenever we are taking risks, this is what we want to think about. So I actually thought it would be good to share some characteristics of risk to help you as you're figuring out if this is a risk that you want to take to include board games into your business. Let's just go through some characteristics of risks that might be helpful for you to understand and consider. The first thing that I'll say, number one, is that risks are required for growth. Hard stop, period, next question. I mean, there's not a lot to weigh here or to talk about here. Risks are required for growth, period. If you and other professionals and entrepreneurs like you want to grow into the fullness of your potential and power, you have to take risks. That's number one. Number two, your ability to take a risk depends on how free you are, Zachary, to make a choice. So let me dig into this one a little bit. Okay, there are forces that hold our free choices in captivity. So your choice, your free choice to create a board game, to offer career coaching to people who might not be able to afford one-on-one coaching, that is a choice that you would want to make. There are some, I'm going to say, some rings around that free choice that are straight up blocking your shine, Zachary. And there are namely two things that I like to talk about. And those things are lack and loss. Okay, so they're kind of like smothering your ability to make a free choice. So the first thing, let's talk about lack. Lack comes into play when we're unable to move forward to take worthwhile risks because we lack something. So we might lack skills or confidence, or we might lack a worthy purpose, or really personal worthiness. This is something that has come up for people that I've coached. We might lack information or desire. So there's something that can oftentimes come into play that we lack, that is keeping us from making a free choice. I would ask, Zachary, ask yourself, is there something that you're lacking that prevents you from going forward? You know, clarifying is the first step to a lot of things, right? Because we talked about clarifying risks in the first place. In this case, it's the first step to accessing your personal agency to take a risk. Okay, the other force that holds our free choices in captivity is loss. And I think that applies to you here too. And the question really is, what are you afraid to lose? You've already hinted at some of the things that you've been thinking about because you mentioned them in your question. So are you afraid to lose money and time and energy and effort? Maybe you're also thinking about how you might lose professional esteem. I get all of that. You know, I also want you to think about what you might lose, Zachary, if you don't entertain this idea. So have you thought about what exactly is on the line if you don't take this risk? If you don't put some, thought, energy, and effort into creating a board game to serve this group of people who you already said seems to be underserved. So it's important here to uncover that side of loss so that you can fully understand what is truly relegating your free choices to the back of the parking lot, in a sense. So again, our choices are not free oftentimes when we are having trouble moving forward. And the two things that you want to consider that might be holding your choices in captivity are lack. And that's, pretty simple to hopefully clarify and then go work now towards acquiring those things. The other thing that you want to consider is loss. What are you afraid of losing? And you want to just make sure you understand loss from the perspective of what you might lose if you take the action and what you might lose if you don't. The third thing that I want you to consider as a characteristic of risk is sampling is very important to risk taking. So can we go back to school for a second, where we were taught that good research is dependent upon a good sample? We're in an election year and we're about to see a whole bunch of surveys and polls all over the place, right? And one of the first questions we have to ask ourselves when looking at the results of all of these surveys and all of these polls is, what was the sample? So results from people interviewed in a handful of states is not generalizable to people in the country, right? Sorry, not going to work. So results from respondents who are all white, black, yellow, purple, green, blue, whatever, it is not representative of the entire country. So when we are considering taking a risk, we often think back to the past or the present, looking for previous or current experiences that can give us insight into the opportunity that is in front of us right now. What matters, Zachary, is what you include in that sample or consideration set. And understand that there are biases that are going to show up. For example, there is recency bias. So we actually remember and may weigh, experiences more heavily if they are recent. So let's say a person wants to have a conversation with their boss about a new idea that they have to improve, let's say, a current process. Then they remember that last week when a team member took a new idea to the boss, that team member was shut down. And now that experience is weighted and has probably more importance or influence in whether this person actually goes to their boss with their new idea. So the same goes, for you, Zach. If you tried something new in your business recently and it didn't work out, you may be weighing that experience more heavily than necessary for what you are currently considering. The point is that the experiences that you handpick and put into your sample matters. As you are considering taking this risk, the experiences from your past and your present that you put into this consideration set or put into this sample, they absolutely matter. And this will influence and frame your thinking and maybe your behavior moving forward. So keep this in mind. Number 4, I want you to remember that you cannot expect to make large profits without the risk of large losses. So you cannot hack courage, and that's something that I've said before, because many people come to me and they actually want to take the good, the possibility, all of the opportunity that comes with courage, and they want to leave potential problems right where they are. They don't want to deal with them. They don't want to consider them. And this is just a reminder that it is impossible to make large profits without the risk of large losses. When you are taking courageous action, it is impossible to access the possibility that comes with courage without also exposing yourself to potential problems. So just understand that for where you want to go in your business, for what you want to create, risk taking means that if you want to make some large profits down the road, then you got to engage in some risk with the potential of large losses. And the last thing that I want you to remember here is that there are levels to risk taking, Zachary. It doesn't always have to be go big or go home. It can absolutely be start small and go slow. So as you are considering this risk that is in front of you, this opportunity that is in front of you, understand that it doesn't have to be put in $100,000, put in all your life savings and see if this thing works. You can absolutely start small and start to play around with this opportunity and see where it goes. So my advice for you, Zachary, is to do a risk assessment, for you to lay it all out. Split a piece of paper into 4 quadrants, make a vertical line down the middle and a horizontal line across the middle, and put down the risk of adding games or a board game into your business. Put down the risk, write them down, the risk of not doing this, not taking this risk. And then what I want you to do is I want you to see what the consequences, or actually think about the consequences of each thing that you write down or that you come up with. And then what I want you to do in the lower 2 quadrants is I want you to write down what are the benefits of adding a board game or creating a board game into your business. And then what are the benefits of you not doing this, not adding board games into the biz? Evaluate each of these and calculate each of these. And for the consequences you identify, ask yourself, how can they be controlled? Now, after you've done all of that, Zachary, let's get creative. Let's get creative and see how you can move on this idea. I hope this helps, Zachary. I'd love for you to actually follow up with us and let us know what you decided to do. We're going to end the show with a little bit of courage candy. These are the bite-sized insights that you can tuck in your pocket, put in your purse, pull them out whenever you need a taste of courage motivation. Do you want to lead better, be better, live better? All right, then roll out your mat because it is time for some risk fitness. Let's count it down and then get going. 5. Risk is routinely required for stepping into the fullness of your potential and power. Don't think you can secure the prestigious position, lead effectively, or move on a creative pursuit without taking risks. It is not happening. 4. To take a risk, you have to understand the risk. The risk of action, of taking action, and equally as important, the risk of inaction, which is basically staying quiet, staying under the radar, and staying stagnant. To be clear, you've got something to lose on both sides. 3, If you're going to take a risk and expose yourself to potential failure and tension or judgment, then you better be doing it for a good reason. And the only good reason or motivation is an internally values aligned motivation. So this is your reminder to check your values. 2, listen, if you're taking a risk, like pushing back on a popular perspective in the room, or resolving conflict with a colleague, or walking in the room with your afro puffs picked all the way out, then you better have some internal resources that you can rely on. Number one, you need some competence, skill, ability, proficiency, and knowledge. And then you also need some confidence, which is basically trusting or having faith in your ability. And number one, let's get to work. All right, peeps, that's it for today. If you heard me say something that really resonated with you, please drop me a line in the form of a review. And of course, share this podcast with your friends too. If you have a question that you want addressed on the Courage Hotline, visit couragehotline.com for more information on how to submit your question. Now, if you need more help conjuring your courage than what this episode provides, check out my website, CandaceDoby.com, to see how we might be able to work together. I'll see you next week for another episode. This podcast is written and recorded by Candace Doby. It is produced by the Can Do Company, and the music was created by Lamara Shirley.